Oh, here we go. Here we go. We got an actual elite here. So we're going to teleport in, pop all of our stuff, get these going, and we get... You're actually joking, right? This is a meme. If that doesn't summarize this patch, I don't know what else can. So somehow today, Blizzard had managed to absolutely destroy the arguable worst class in the entire game, and that is Sorcerer. Now, if you guys were anything like me, you were expecting a ton of changes for Sorcerer. I was expecting some nerfs, specifically Aspect of Control and Devouring Blaze, but I was also expecting a ton of buffs to make up for that, because if you guys have played Sorcerer, you know the only way to deal damage on it is to CC'd enemies and to burning enemies, which both of those things that I listed take advantage of that. Otherwise, you're dealing basically no damage in like mid to upper tier nightmares. You're not even killing a basic trash mob with your skills unless you're CCing them and burning them. So there was a lot that they really needed to do to fix this character, and today's patch did none of that and just overall made it significantly worse. So with this video, we're going to go through all the different things that they changed and what they didn't do, and just I'll show you guys exactly why it is just so bad, and also why it's not really even going to get any better once the actual season comes out and we get to the Malignant Hearts and the new aspect and unique. I've been trying to record this video a bunch of times and I end up just starting to rant because I get genuinely annoyed that we're actually at this point on the Sorcerer. I started off Rogue when the game came out, and I quickly switched to Sorcerer, and it was definitely the most fun I had in the game. Despite its very prominent issues, like I said, with the CC and the burning, you were very pigeonholed into many different things and also using all of these defensive skills. And there's just so much that have made every single aspect of this character worse. So let's go ahead and start getting into that. So first off, the big ones, Devouring Blaze and Aspect of Control. What did they do? Well, they said for Aspect of Control, they fixed an issue where it was applying its damage buff multiple times to a stunned boss. And this is actually a lie. What they ended up doing is it no longer stacks at all on anything. So you'd maybe think we'd be fine for mobbing and bossing is just going to get slower. No, it no longer stacks at all. So if you stun, freeze, and immobilize them, it's going to be the exact same as just stunning them. So that kind of sucks. If you guys see any of the gameplay in the background here, you can see me testing that with the Firebolt. After I hit him with it, look for the dot damage. It's going to be at about, I think, 102. And then I'm going to teleport in, which stuns them, and it's going to jump up to about 120. And then I'm going to freeze them, and it's still going to stay at 120. So right there, you guys can see there's proof that is not stacking even on normal mobs, and it's not just bosses like the patch note says, which is very unfortunate. Now, for Devouring Blaze, they ended up lowering the amount of crit damage it provides against burning enemies, and also the very big one, the amount of crit damage it applies to immobilized enemies. So at 6 out of 3, which is what most Sorcerer builds ran, if you had +3 on your amulet, the damage to immobilize was 150% X crit. That is now just 60% X crit. They took off 90% of our crit damage to immobilize enemies, which was also a very hard thing to do because you had to utilize Flame Shield in most builds to actually get to that immobilization, which was still only for about like 2 to 3 seconds. And that was your entire like big damage window, whereas those 2 to 3 seconds. It's not like it was something that was always active. It is crazy to me that they nerfed it that hard. And then, which leads us into my next point, where they didn't buff anything whatsoever to make up for this. We saw 2 damage increases to the Sorcerer's skills. That is to enhance charge bolts, and then also to the Firebolt basic skill and the initial damage of it. So pretty much this class saw no skill buffs, and in turn got no longer stacking Aspect of Control and a 90% of the crit damage taken away from their immobilized Devouring Blaze part, which is crazy. And then for our Blizzard build specifically, they lowered the damage of the ice spikes and their bonus damage to frozen enemies, which is also just crazy. So I can't remember if I've been saying it because, like I said, I've been recording this video a bunch of different times, but our Blizzard build, I was hitting 1.52 million. Now I capped out in a very cherry-picked example, 410,000. That was the highest I could possibly hit after using all of my defensive skills. And our defensive skills actually got even worse themselves because what they ended up doing globally was reducing our cooldown reduction. So offhands no longer give quite as much. So for example, our Frost Novas, which is our only way of really applying vulnerable besides Ice Blades, but that's kind of inconsistent and to just one target. But Frost Nova, that now has about a 2-second cooldown, longer cooldown per charge, which definitely adds up. I was almost never running out because normally I'd kill everything, get the 4 seconds back that the skill node for Frost Nova actually gives you. Now, there was so many times I was just sitting there in a dungeon and I didn't have any Frost Novas, I didn't have a teleport, I didn't have a flame shield. So I just had to sit there and do nothing until they came back before I'm allowed to actually go in and mildly kill things anymore. So that was super frustrating. And the worst part about all of these changes that I've just been ranting about is it doesn't change the necessity of all these skills. Aspect and Control is still a really good overall damage buff compared to pretty much everything else. It's still, what is it on an amulet? It is about 53% on an amulet, which is really, really good compared to a lot of the other aspects for the Sorcerer. And also Devouring Blaze is still 60% X crit to immobilize when you have 6 out of 3. So like those are still really good buffs, but the base damage doesn't reflect anything. So it ends up not changing anything. You still take these, and I'm just going to end up going into another rant because it just pisses me off because it seems like absolutely nobody playtested any of this. So I'm sorry if this last little minute here has sounded a little bit more rambling because it kind of is, but yeah. Overall, these changes are just terrible. And it really sucks because they did do some decent buffs in there to like the damage reduction portions of the skill tree and like the duration of your barrier after casting a defensive skill. Also making like mastery skills have a damage bonus on weapons, which is really cool. But it just doesn't matter because we have all of these overarching nerfs to the big main damage sources. So we're never going to be anything close to what we were beforehand, which was still the weakest character in the game. I've seen a couple people say, oh, that they just did this because the Malignant Hearts are going to make up for it and the Sorcerer is going to be really strong. But we already know what the Malignant Hearts are going to be. They released what all of them are, and there's really only 2 that sound like they're going to be good for the Sorcerer. One is going to be for dots, so Fire Sorcerers could see a little bit better output out of this, and it's basically Aspect of Control where you get a bonus to your damage over time for each crowd control effect on the target, and then actually you get bonus damage to unstoppable and staggered bosses, and that's like 130%. So that's like a really good amount, but it's still not really going to get us to where we were beforehand, even without that. And then that one is actually just a general, so every single character is going to have access to that Malignant Heart. And then the only other Sorcerer-specific Malignant Heart that is going to be maybe okay is going to be the Omni Power, where core skills that launch a projectile consume all of your mana, and then for every 45 to 35 extra mana consumed, you launch an additional projectile, and the damage is increased by 3 to 5%. Now, depending on what actually counts as a projectile, things like Chain Lightning or Frozen Orb could all be really good. But once again, it's not going to bring us back to where we were. So overall, we're just going to feel less powerful than we were last season. And that's kind of a problem. I'm not saying we need to constantly have power creep, but we should at least have equal shifts in power. So maybe instead of Ice Shards and our lightning builds being like the main things, we have Incinerate, Meteor, and things like that kind of dominating the Sorcerer meta. And then on top of all of that, all of the memes of Sorcerers just getting one shot, it's all gotten worse because they overall just decrease survivability across the board for everybody. So now on Sorcerer, you're just going to be getting one shot even in lower Nightmare tiers, which is pretty crazy. And then obviously the whole point of the video before this, we're not going to be dealing any damage, so there's no like glass cannon aspect. Like the character literally has a skill called Glass Cannon. That's what this character should be able to turn into. It should be some of the highest damage in the game, but also you die very easily, and we just die very easily. That's the only thing we get, and it's very frustrating because it just seems like nobody tested this out. There was just absolutely no informed decisions into these changes, and it's very disappointing to see going into season 1. But yeah, hopefully all of that made sense. That's kind of the main things I want to talk about with the changes today. We're gonna have to wait and see and look firsthand how this character is gonna actually end up with the Malignant Hearts, but right now I really do not have high hopes. So maybe I am overreacting. Who knows? Let me know how you guys feel about these Sorc changes down below, or just for any of the characters. I know a lot of them got hit hard, and a lot of things that were really strong didn't really get hit at all, mainly like Bone Spear Necro, which is pretty wild. But yeah, let me know down in the comments how you're feeling overall about this patch. But yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya.